Welcome everyone to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thanks so much for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and of course, learning. I'm your host, Dave Nava. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce and a military trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host or co-host to take part in the conversation so we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is exploring project and program manager roles and career paths. So with that, I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-host for tonight's session, Anastasia Lianakis. And Anastasia, I know your title just changed, but it's in my Slack, which is on my crashed computer. So I'll let you introduce your title.
So my new role as of Feb 1 is Senior Director, Portfolio Services Leader at Salesforce. What does that actually mean? The portfolio that I oversee is our communications, media, and technology business unit. And the exciting new role is that I now oversee all the project managers. That's really, really cool. And small world, Lina is now on my team. So, and I've known her since I was like 28 years old, and I didn't realize it when I was like, that face, that name. I've known her since I finished school at my first job in Houston. So it's a small world. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
For added context, Anastasia is a certified project management professional, or PMP. She has 6 Salesforce certifications and has been with Salesforce for over 9 years. And then, of course, during that time, she's acquired extensive experience in consulting as well as project and program management. It's awesome to have you here. Do you want to take a few moments and kind of talk about your Salesforce story, and then we will cover some admin items?
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned a little bit about my initial background, right? Houston. So by schooling or by trade, whatever you want to call it, I'm actually a Purdue mechanical engineer. I'm very proud of it and excited about it, and I loved it. So my first job out of school and why I went to school is actually automotive engineering. And at the time when I finished school, I'm actually from Michigan, Detroit native. It was very difficult to find a job. So I branched out a bit and I worked for a company called Air Liquide. They're an industrial gas company for 4 years. It was wonderful. It took me to Houston and San Francisco. And I was in the wine and beverage industry at the time as an application specialist in San Francisco Bay Area. And I actually worked across the street, from Salesforce. So long story short, at the time, I didn't really want to stay in the industry. And Salesforce was still very small. It's 2007. So I made the big leap and went over to technology and started from the bottom. So I started up as a enterprise business rep, So what that really means is I was supporting an account executive on the sales side. So it was great. I got to learn the role because of my engineering experience. I just kind of, my brain was easy to adjust, right? To transition. Learned a lot. I moved back to the Midwest after being away for a long time, but I went to Chicago. And at the time, there are no other Salesforce offices like there is now. So I went to a partner called Model Metrics. So when I went to Model Metrics, I continued my sales journey there. So inside sales, as well as a services account executive. So in the services world that I am now as a project manager, I would sell all of those services. And I loved it. It was great. But in 2011, we were acquired back to Salesforce and I came full circle. So I think my little tenure was like 10 years, like 15 years now, if you put it all in there. I wanted to change directions. I knew as I had a family, I wanted to have more planned travel, and I started my PM career. So I was started off as a design PM in our experience design group and a core PM. So all the clouds you're probably familiar with, sales, service, et cetera. I was an individual contributor. I was people manager. I was a team lead, which is overseeing 25 people. And now this past February, they passed me the torch and I oversee all 60 or so of the project managers at Salesforce and CMT. So it's super exciting. I love what I do. I love the connections that I make. About me, it's very, I'll end with this, my values, right? So I think that the compliment I received after I shared my values is I was told that I live my values. So it's wonderful to hear that. But my top 3 values are family, trust, and balance, right? So I'm also a single parent. So I have to do radical priority to get through my day. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I hope it wasn't too long-winded.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. And it's so I guess I didn't mention it earlier, but I actually worked with Anastasia when I first started at Salesforce, and started my first project with her, and she was my PM, and the customer absolutely loved her. So we'll talk about why that was, and how, if you're interested in project management, you can undertake certain actions to build trust and a relationship with your customer as well. But that was my first impression, was wow, like, Anastasia really has a gift with just building relationships with folks. And
She's
so
been like that all these years, even before our connection in Salesforce. It's been
Anytime you guys come to my house in the morning and pump me up, this is awesome. I love it.
But the takeaway, like for everyone there, is not only can Anastasia obviously talk about project program management, but she can talk about sales, delivery, so the full gamut. So when you're thinking up your questions, don't hold back. This can be a really great session, regardless of what your interest area is. So with that, I can't see everyone on the call because I'm on my cell phone, but I'm going to assume that there's new folks on the call. And so whenever folks join for the first time, I always like to kind of go over the administrative items, so it sets a level playing field. Everyone understands kind of what we're doing here. So the purpose of these office hours is to have an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers as well as allies. Everyone is welcome to attend, to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career related goals. And so for this next hour, this is your opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to raise your hand, post stuff in chat, and help answer questions, as well as ask questions from your perspective, which will provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. And so normally I post in chat all these different links, but like I said, my computer's broken, so that'll be available on YouTube. And Elio, if you'd be so kind as to maybe you could manage who has their hand raised and who's posting questions in chat, that would be helpful. And if you're able to do a screenshot for our group photo at the midpoint, that'd be great as well, because my screenshot will be tiny.
I gotcha.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right. So with that, as I usually do, I like to open the floor with a few questions to provide context, and then I turn it over to you to follow up, because honestly, this is your session. It's not meant to be an interview with me and Anastasia. It's meant to be an immersive conversation where you get to ask her questions based upon what you're interested in. And so I'll open the floor, Anastasia, with, you've already talked about your role and kind of what that means. At a broad level, for folks that are, maybe they're coming from the military, and in the military, we're always kind of taught our secondary job is project program manager, or maybe they're coming from another industry where they've led projects, like, maybe I'll do this in the Salesforce realm. What are some different types of project program management roles that are available at Salesforce?
Right. Well, I want to start off, as well, to say thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Everyone that I've encountered from the military world that's come to Salesforce, you're all amazing. The work ethic's amazing. And so I'm very excited to be with all of you today. What we have to offer, right, in terms of our roles. So if you look at the project management, program management space, I'll start from kind of like what I say, I don't want to say entry level, but I kind of will walk through that. So before I go into that, we have three types of projects or programs at Salesforce. We have our smaller projects, right, which you could be an individual work stream, a mid-sized project, which you could be working with multiple project managers, multiple work streams, and a large program, which just think of it as a large name that you see out, right, where it could be 300 people, right? So you could gradually get to that space. Now, the reason why I mention that is because our project controller role does live in that larger space, right? But is more of a junior role, and you're specifically overseeing the financials, because the financial role is so large and so impactful in those programs. You're purely focused on financials and staffing and resourcing. So that's a project controller role. If you see that on any of our recruiting sites. The second is a Scrum Master, right? So that is interchangeable. Usually it will fall in our larger programs, because in our larger programs, you'll have a program manager, a project manager, and a Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master, what that entails is your agile experience, right? You are focused on running a work stream and making sure that it's running smoothly, and you're overseeing all those resources, right? I don't mean to oversimplify it, but that's just kind of that. And then you have your project manager, senior project manager, and program manager. And view that as your project manager, program manager, senior and program manager are, in essence, this role. You're able to be a scrum master and a project manager. You can oversee both, right? But as you go from project manager, senior project, or program, I would view it as you have two things that are different. The first is the level of engagement you can be staffed on that you're comfortable with, and also your soft skills. Someone on the program level should be able to talk to executives, to be able to communicate, to be able to, manage conflict. So what's very true to me, I will tell you all, when you, and this is probably one of David's follow-up questions, so I'll kind of close it, it's a 2-for-1. If you want to go into project management, your certifications are fantastic or needed, right? I would say your PMP is great, but right now, if I were to hire someone, I would look at your CSM, right? So I would rather you get your agile experience first, because the PMP is fantastic, but it's a longer lift, right? And then also your Salesforce certs, right? Because then you're showing, so let's take a step back. You're doing two things. You're getting your foundation of Salesforce, getting to know the actual platform, but you're also showing Salesforce that you're investing, right? You are also investing in yourself. So you're coming to the table and saying, I know your platform. With that being said, that's your table stakes, right? If I look at someone's resume, I look at three things. I look at, their Salesforce certs, PM certs. I look at their consulting experience, because we are consultancy, right? It's very different to be an internal project manager than external, because, clients are tough. And the third is soft skills, right? So I will tell you that item and people's personalities, how they engage, sometimes cannot be learned, right? It can be mentored, but sometimes cannot be learned. So I hope that was a good I was trying to give you an overview of what the role is and what the expectations are as well. So,
yeah, that's great. And speaking as a former military officer, one of the things that is ingrained into us as we get ready to retire is, you got to get your PMP, and there's really never any reason why. Like, people are like, oh, well, everyone's getting it, you should get it. So of course I got it. But to Anastasia's point, that's waterfall, right? So if you're not familiar with the difference, waterfall is for large, fairly stable projects that go through the 12, program areas, and they're the same every time. And that method fails miserably when put in a software development environment like Salesforce, where you need to be iterative and to have, agile principles. I would ask Anastasia, so you mentioned CSM, Certified Scrum Master. There's obviously other agile certifications out there. Is CSM preferred by Salesforce, or does it matter as long as you have some agile cert?
It's a good question. So, so Scrum Alliance is a well-known, it's a lighter lift where you can take a course, learn a lot about it. That is not a preferred choice. It's just one that is actionable when you have a heavy plate. The other one you can look into, if you want a PMI certified course, they do have the ACP, right? And that's also fantastic. So when I was reviewing my resources that we acquired, looking at their certifications, I'm not gonna, I actually told people, okay, they don't have the CSM, but they have the PMI equivalent. So CSM is an example. It's probably the most well-known, but if you prefer a different route, as long as it's a strong credited program, it would be accepted by Salesforce.
Gotcha. And so kind of a road to get there. I have the CSM, and it basically was a week of courses followed by an open book test, and you get 2 chances at it. It may have changed since then, but it's probably pretty similar. And I think with my military discount, it was something like $800, but I think you can find it anywhere from $800 to $1,200. And so if you're wondering, like, hey, I'm in the military, that's expensive, how do I pay for that? I didn't pay for mine. What I did was I went to my my department lead and said, hey, listen, this certification is going to help us be able to crank out projects, quicker. And I sold it as a necessity for the current role. And in large part it was, but my organization paid for that. And so if you're saying to yourself, well, I'm not in the military, I work for company ABC, same difference, right? You know, if you have educational resources that they will cover down for you on, it's very easy to sell a CSM cert, especially if you're already doing project work, because I mean, that's naturally going to help you understand, even if you're not a PM, what your PM's going through. You can provide them with assistance, and it makes you a better, member of the project team, because you have a more in-depth understanding of what a sprint is, and what an epic is, and the whole hierarchy of organization that gets wrapped up into agile. So great cert, and there's different paths to get that. And it's PMI, the ACP is a bit more involved. I would argue it's harder to get because they have more prerequisites. Not saying don't go for it, but if you're looking, like if you have limited time, the CSM is probably the way to go.
Yep.
No, I'm glad that we're covering this, because there's a lot of certifications in the field.
There are.
PMP has been around since I first started in the field 25 plus years ago. Same with Microsoft and Cisco were the big ones, and PM, those three, right? And Anastasia, I appreciate you giving the insight, right, of what you as a hiring manager, what you're looking for, because sometimes there's too much information out there, or people are getting the wrong information. I know I've networked with a lot of folks on this call that are trying to find out how best to utilize their time to be more specific about where they should focus on. And so I just appreciate you giving this insight. I think PMP is fantastic. I don't have PMP. I actually was trying to get my undergrad when everybody was going to PMP and Microsoft certification, and I found out that my undergrad actually helped me open more doors than those two certs.
Right. So, and the thing is, full disclosure, right? So it was PMP at one point, it was 5 years ago now, my goodness. Yeah, it was required. So they said everyone has to get their PMP. And I decided to wait till I have two children. One was like 2 months old to have to start doing this. So don't do that. Okay. Do it when you have more time. But what I'm trying to say is, like, looking back, when I took the exam, it's wonderful. It's foundational, but I didn't pass the first time. Want to know why, everyone? Because I thought about what I would do with my experience. And I passed second time. What would PMP do if I had 2 years to plan a program, right? So it's more, so that's why I say the PMP is wonderful. I think it's a great credential. It's highly respected because you have to go through a process, but as we're transitioning now to more hybrid approach, right? We do it, I would say it's half waterfall, half agile in our methodology, right? It's not really one-to-one from PMP. That's why actually last year, the last edition, they updated the actual book to add in agile, right? It didn't have them there before. So they're getting there, and they have the others. And I think people chatted in some additional ones that we have. There's also the agile hybrid PMI, there's also, what's the other? It will come to me. Safe. There we go. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. So there are a couple questions in chat here that I did want to raise, and we'll go in order here. Fedor asks, is it best to begin at the control level, back when you were talking about the different levels of project management roles?
It depends, right? It depends on what you want to do, right? I think the biggest message that David has here from experience, right? Focus on what you're passionate about, and don't go into it and say, well, this is what I want to achieve, and just be pinpoint at it, right? Because look at my background, right? You have skills that you're using right now that can translate. So to take a step back, yes, if you would like to be a controller and you would like to learn on the financial side and be in a larger program, yes. But if you would like to kind of get into smaller projects and run an individual work stream and have control there, I would go the project manager route.
Gotcha. All right. Another question. This one's from Hunter, and he's asking for some resume guidance. So he's saying, I'm transitioning from the military to the civilian world, looking into Salesforce and building my resume. I don't want to focus too much on a specific subject. Would you rather see more of my leadership roles and programs that I have run, or would you rather see the impacts and all the bigger projects that I've been a part of?
It's a good question. Because we're a larger consultancy now, I will say when I take a look at someone's resume, I say, will they be successful in my space, right? After we have a 60-day onboarding process where you could potentially add in some additional certs if you haven't finished them, are enabled on some other areas. And within 60 days, are you ready to go, right? If the answer is no, I probably will tell you need more experience. So with that being said, I would like to see that you could take on larger projects, right? Because that's where we are in our space right now. And, if you're not there yet in terms of your resume, going to a partner is fantastic, right? To get that experience under your belt where you could be exposed to smaller projects before you come to Salesforce. Did I answer that question and make sure I didn't miss anything?
I'm not sure if Hunter has audio, but it sounds like that was what he was targeting. So Hunter, if it wasn't, if you had a follow-up, let us know in chat. And to kind of piggyback on everyone's comments, Hunter, if you're not, he says yes, good deal.
Yes, got it. I see it. Thank you.
If you're not familiar with the Salesforce Hiring Our Heroes Fellowship, which folks have kindly put the link in there in chat, that's kind of the golden ticket to get into the industry from the military, the 12-week internship with a partner that gives you consulting experience. If you're not in the military, you can look up the Salesforce Pathfinder Program, which is geared toward military and/or recent college grads. And then if you're not any one of those, then we can absolutely talk about other pathways to get into the industry and generate some alternative work experience. So I wanted to just ask one final question, kind of about the whole certification technical piece before we move on. From a application perspective, obviously there's tons of different apps that you can use to manage projects, from Microsoft Project, to Jira. When you're hiring for PMs, Anastasia, are there specific suites of applications that you're looking for? Does it matter? What are some good things to begin looking into and learning about?
Yes, so I take a look and see if people have experience in agile tools, for example, Jira, Rally, right? And have you managed those? Because if you're going to be overseeing a project, that is an item that you need to take on. Our PM tools, we do smart sheets. And if you've had experience on project, right, that's fine, but we are a Mac shop, right? So smart sheets is our tool. And I would say the other is, the other tool I would say is Communication Rise, right? There's why I paused, because that's our agile tools are Jira, Rally, right? Others. Smart Sheets is how you manage, but then how you communicate and you present. We are Google Shop, right? And we have Slack. So those are other tools that are going to be, number one, just working through all your presentations and all your communications, as well as Confluence as well. Sorry, so I just remembered.
Gotcha. And I know that we used Agile Accelerator in our project. I'm not sure if that's the standard or.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, David. So it's because Rally was our standard tool at Salesforce, and then we were using the in-house tool, but it sounds as though we're going to be probably going back to Jira or Rally. So
Okay.
Agile Accelerator is an internal tool, and what I mean by that, it was built on our platform. It's fantastic, but it's sometimes not as scalable. So it's something that we offer to our customers if they don't have an Agile tool, because 9 times out of 10, your large customer will come and say, I use Jira, I have Rally, and you have to know how to utilize those tools, if that makes sense. So.
Yep. If you're interested just in playing around with Agile Accelerator, it was built by Salesforce Labs. It is on the App Exchange for free. Download it into your playground or your free dev org. And so I'm just kind of scanning chat for questions here. Oh, thank you, Lina, for the Pathfinder.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate that. So, follow-up question would be, as folks are looking at program project management roles and they're interested in getting started, what are some research or networking activities that you'd recommend for someone that is interested in a PM role but may not be quite so sure about the vertical or the type of role to pursue? Should they pursue healthcare, life sciences, or should it be, financial, or, there's lots of different options out there.
Yeah, so I would say when I was going through these questions and preparing, the first thing that came to mind was mentorship and connection, right? And building your network, right? So we all have LinkedIn and such. The programs that Lina and team mentioned, those are fantastic, right? Those will get you twofold, get you into Salesforce, into good community. I know back when I was getting started, the other thing that I did was there should be local Salesforce groups as well, right? And then there's also, PM groups. The reason why I mention is right now, like my focus is project management for Salesforce, right? But you can project management anywhere. It depends on what you want to do. But if you kind of want to make sure you actually have pinpoint with the direction, I would say something like that, the Salesforce Incorporated. And there's also, in terms of mentorships, even someone like myself, right? If I can't directly help you, I have a large network and I can assist that way as well. So don't think you're bothering people, because literally my network, if I look back, the people I've known for 15 years, and it's because of them I'm here today, right? People that give you a chance and have those conversations with you. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And that's a great resource. I appreciate that. So take note, everyone, connect with Anastasia on LinkedIn. And Carlos, I see your hand. We'll get to you in 1 second. I would just, I always bring this up because sometimes there's new folks that haven't heard of it. If you're military Trailblazer, then the Veterati platform is fantastic. Veterati, where you can sign up for 1-hour focus sessions with really anybody in any industry. But if you're interested in project management, you can certainly sign up with a Salesforce or, project manager and talk to them about their job and leverage that mentorship tool to kind of fill in the blanks on maybe some of the questions that you have about project management. But Carlos, over to you.
Yeah, so as someone considering project manager roles in the future, is there an ideal path that would make you be more, well-rounded that we could possibly consider, as these entry-level roles that we could possibly consider down the line?
So in order for, you to be part of Salesforce, like for my roles, we look at 5 years experience, right? Minimum. So what I tell people a lot of times when they come to me, our partnership, we're basically, if you look at our foundation and how we work moving forward at Salesforce, it's better together, right? So the path I would take is, if you're new to the PM world and PM role, I would do a couple things. I would find a mentor that you can work with, right? In that space. I would get your certification so you have your foundational. And then I would look into smaller organizations like partners that you can learn and grow with, right? That could have more entry-level positions. So then you can have that experience twofold. And if you want to come to larger organization, you can.
Yeah, great advice. And just to reiterate what Anastasia said, a lot of folks are like, I want to work at Salesforce, which is a noble and lofty goal. It's fairly difficult to be able to roll, right out of either the military or from a civilian unrelated industry into Salesforce. It does happen. We talked about that on the last call. It happened on my team, but it's not the norm. I spent a year applying for jobs at Salesforce and never getting a call back. And then it was only through building my network and keeping after it that I actually got here. So if you don't get hired initially, keep pushing. You'll get there. What they're probably looking for is you to have some experience prior to coming aboard Salesforce, and the partner ecosystem is a phenomenal place to do that. So Doc, I see your hand raised. We'll get to you in one moment. I want to address Christopher's question, and then Elio is going to help us with a group photo, and then we'll come back to Doc. So let me go to my chat here. And so Christopher is asking, a related question about paths. So he's in the process of taking his exam cert in the next 2 weeks, and wants to see, is it best to get an admin role position first and then roll into a PM role? He says he's transitioning at the beginning of the year, but intent on volunteering with a nonprofit with his time left.
It's a good question. I mean, being an admin is amazing experience, like what you will learn. It's invaluable. So I don't see it as a negative, right? But if you want to go into project management sooner, it would probably be beneficial to maybe get a more project management focused role, but it won't hurt you, right? You'll learn, maybe you'll go into that role and learn that something else that you'd like, that you enjoy more. Look at David. David, you're a great example, right? You thought you wanted to be a PM, right? And you went a different route, and you're in a different route now, right? So he was an SBA, an analyst in my project, and and now he's an engineer, sales engineer, right? So the more exposure you have, going in there and saying, I want to do this. Well, you know what? You could realize through that role and meet people that you want to do something else. So
yeah, 100%. You don't know.
Yeah, you really don't, because I started out as a system admin and just realized that, I want to go into consultant. So I went from an analyst to solution architect to project management. So yeah, you never know, but I wouldn't take back the time. The stepping stone is what I call it, for my knowledge, because you'll be able to be more engaged with your client and give that feedback and resource and knowledge to your team to lead your team successfully.
Yeah, 100%. We've talked about it on previous calls, and I call it test driving potential career paths. So Christopher, to your point, absolutely do the volunteer position. If you can be a nonprofit admin like I was, when I was transitioning prior to getting out, that'll help inform, what you want to do. And I would say that, do follow your passions, right? So if you're doing a volunteer nonprofit role as an admin, you love that, then keep on being an admin, and you can always transition later to being a project manager if you choose to. To Anastasia's point, I test drove several different career paths, some while I was transitioning and others afterwards. So I was a volunteer admin for a nonprofit. I was a consultant for a separate nonprofit, and then I rolled into to Lina's point, I preferred consulting over being an admin, and I was a consultant for a year, and then I met Anastasia on my first project as an SB or as a BA, and
you ran.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Engineer came up, and I tried that. So the great thing about the ecosystem is you're not held to one career path for 20 years like you might be in the military. Follow your passions, and you can always, as long as you're building a solid base in the Salesforce platform and you're learning those critical soft skills to be able to develop relationships, you can apply those across the ecosystem. And yeah, so.
I'm just kidding. I wanted to throw a couple things out there about enablement, right? So at Coastal, I'm working with some of our fellows over there. I see Don's in here. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was during my transition, I found that LinkedIn Learning, I did free premium as part of the military, and that kind of helped take some of the edge off of the fundamentals or the talking point differences between civilian and military, right? At least from the enlisted side. I wasn't an officer in there. The other thing is I wanted to give a shameless plug out to Merivis. They hold a small piece of my heart. They're actually doing a kind of like an innovation sprint, like what we did with Salesforce Military last year. And I'm actually thinking about trying to step into that product owner role. So anyway, the other thing I was going to talk about was the Salesforce Pathfinder program. I initially researched that, and for our vets and our allies, you cannot be certified already in order to be part of that program. So just a heads up on that. The last thing I wanted to give, David's like, God, why did I let him talk?
No, it's
Right, spot on. No worries.
The last thing I wanted to give, and I went ahead and linked that into the chat too, was Onward to Opportunity. So I hear a lot of talk about costs associated to the PMP and stuff. This is a no cost for veterans. So you guys might want to look into it. I was actually going through an application process in it, similar to the Hiring Our Heroes. I got accepted into it, but I also got accepted into HOH. And in case you can't tell, I went Hiring Our Heroes. But I am looking at revisiting it, so maybe I'll be competing with some of you in the future. That's it. I'll shut up.
No, it's all good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. I'll never shut you down for offering free resources. So that's awesome. I know we have a couple questions in chat, but Iris, I believe, is next, and then we'll handle those. So Iris, you have the floor.
Thank you again for being here, Anastasia. This is awesome. Such valid information. I meet a lot of applicants who have never heard of Salesforce, haven't even started on their trail, and they're like, when can I start working at Salesforce? And I'm like, let's walk before, let's crawl before we walk,
Right.
kind of thing. So this is such valuable information. And I also wanted to add that Onward opportunity is also available for military spouses as well. So really, really good place to start.
Wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
And you know what I just realized, David? We didn't do a plug onto Trailhead as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So-
If there's folks that don't know about Trailhead, if you're joining for the first time, Trailhead is Salesforce's free learning platform. You can just Google Trailhead, Salesforce, and sign up for a free account, and you'll have access to over 1,000 guided learning experiences in bite-sized chunks that you can learn the Salesforce platform, anywhere from being a business user to a developer to a consultant, whatever you want to do in the ecosystem, and leverage that to earn certifications and power your job, your career, professional development. And then partner to that is Salesforce Military, which is a sister site that links with Trailhead and provides transitioning service members, veterans, and spouses with free certs for free vouchers for certifications as well as courses. And so you can just do a Google search for VetForce for that. And to further plug Merivis, if you're looking for that, it's spelled Merivis, veteran-focused nonprofit in the education space that uses those Trailhead military vouchers to be able to provide you with a one-week immersive course in a variety of different certifications. And they also offer access to their community, which, much like Hiring Our Heroes, is a vibrant place to meet fellow Trailblazers and to network. So Eric, I think your hand went up briefly, but before we get to you, we've got a couple questions in the chat. So we'll go ahead and get to those. First one is from Michael, and then we'll tackle Natalie's. Michael asks, if you have the opportunity to work for a nonprofit, but it doesn't pay industry standard, would you suggest, do you have any compelling reasons for taking this position over a consultant role? And I guess the consultant role, he says, is a small company, be one of two Salesforce folks. So consulting role versus nonprofit.
I think you can do both.
I was going to say, well, you can probably do both. That's a good answer, or spoke up. But it comes back to what you want to do, right? The best advice I can give you is, I think both are fantastic opportunities. It's really what path you want to take with your career and what experience you want to gain.
Yeah, for sure.
Nonprofits are just different animals.
Yeah.
They use different language, NPSP or not, typically. So I'd say do both. Figure out, do it. You don't know until you try it. You might dig it.
Yeah, definitely test drive them if you can. To Dominic's point, NPSP or Nonprofit Success Pack is a derivative of Salesforce. It is not the standard Salesforce, and so it's a specialized skill set. Some other things to consider. While it feels great to give back to a nonprofit, and I've done it in the past, it doesn't always pay great. Some nonprofits do. Some nonprofits offer six-figure salaries. Most do not.
Mm-hmm.
So take that into consideration. And you can always, to Anastasia's point, be a consultant and then volunteer on the side for a nonprofit. If you're working for a nonprofit, most likely you're going to be very conversant in NPSP, grants management, all those nonprofit related functional and feature areas. And that's kind of it, right? But if you're a consultant, you'll have access to a wide range of Salesforce products and clouds, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Experience Cloud, perhaps Marketing Cloud, CRM Analytics. And so if you really want to learn and expand your knowledge of the platform, do what Lina and I did, which was go consulting, and Anastasia as well. And you're going to have access to more learning opportunities across a wider portfolio of Salesforce's products. All right, so heading back into chat here, and there's one more question, and then Eric, we will get to your question. And Natalie asks, and this is a great question, Natalie. I appreciate you asking it. Could you please describe a day in the life of a PM at Salesforce? For instance, how many clients, number of projects, length of projects, travel, number of team members, etc. Just curious if there's a typical day or different based on industry, client type, etc.
It's a good question. I'm going to go with a typical day, and I'm with the assumption that, you're a senior project manager, right? You're on a medium-sized program. So you would be fully focused on that program, right? So one project, one client, depending on your number of resources. It's a good question. I would say between 15 and 20. Okay, those resources would be yourself as a PM. You'd have a senior business analyst. You'd have a technical architect. Those are your foundational people, right? So those three for sure. Then you would have your developers. You would have your QA lead, your QA resources. You would have education, whatever it may be. But it all comes down to, if you take a look at your project, it comes down to the scope of the engagement, right? And so depending on what you're trying to achieve, that's how we staff out our resources in terms of their specialties. But that gives you a high level of those resources. In terms of travel, I'm looking in the chat, make sure I didn't miss anything. So we've had an interesting life the past 2 years, right? Like more than 2 years now. So to be transparent, I had my first, I traveled for the first time in 2 years last month. We had a overall shutdown of travel. When COVID hit, we did not allow anyone to travel. We still have a travel approval process that goes up to SVP to be able to travel client focused. With that being said, as we go back to normal, say COVID never existed, and that was my biggest wish, all of our wishes, right? As a project manager at Salesforce, we're not a consultancy where you fly out on Monday and you come back on Thursday every week, right? We are more of a, as a project manager, you will have control of that as well. You're gonna set the schedule. So when I run my projects, and I tell my team members as well, as a project manager, you can work with your client to set the expectations. You'll probably be on site for what we call our kickoff, right? So we get to know people, lay the foundation for 2 to 3 days. Because my mentality is, unless it's very, very large, after 3 days, you are losing people because they're going to come away from their day jobs. So I like to do, everyone flies in on a Monday, you start your workshop in the Monday afternoon, full day Tuesday, maybe half day Wednesday, get back home. And then after that, since we're agile, well, hybrid agile, excuse me, we would be on site for our sprint planning, right? So a couple of days. So every 2 weeks, you have that face-to-face. And then every major milestone, or if you wanted to have a workshop, right? So it's planned. When I had my last projects before I transitioned in, I was basically traveling every couple of weeks for a couple of days. But we know that people's lives have changed, right? So I, had my children, and they were like, "What do you mean you're going on a plane?" And they were crying. I'm like, "What?" They're like, "You haven't gone on a plane in 2 years, right?" So we understand, right, that people have to make different sacrifices now. It's not like before. But I think the biggest thing I think people want to know is that no, you're not going to be a road warrior at the moment at Salesforce. Just want to see if there's any other item I've missed in that question. Did I get everything, Natalie? Number of projects, how many clients? One. Oh, length of projects. It's a good question. So I would say your shortest project would be 6 months, and it could be up to 2 to 3 years. right? If you're in a large program, but I would say the average is 6 months, to a year for your projects.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks for the great question, Natalie. And I'll offer a slightly different perspective on the travel piece. I think it probably differs depending on where you work in Salesforce. Because when I was on Anastasia's team, that was like the height of COVID, and we didn't travel at all. Even though the client, would have benefited from having us on site, for safety concerns, we didn't do that. Now that I'm an SE, I traveled 3 times last month, and we've got conferences going on all the time. And especially, Salesforce, as recently as today, has softened some of the requirements for being in person, based upon the science that has come out and the latest with safety regulations. So I think travel on some teams is opening up a bit more than it has in the past, and hopefully, knock on wood, that will continue, because honestly, like that's one of the best parts about the job is you get to travel and you get to meet your customer face to face, and you can only build so much relationship through a computer screen. It really does make a difference when you're at dinner with them and you're laughing and you're interacting in person. So Eric, you've been very patient. I will turn the floor over to you for your question or comment.
So it was more of a comment, and it's like kind of way back now, but I was just going to say to the guys that were all transitioning, or all the people that are transitioning, like there's all these links and resources to all this great stuff, which is all awesome. There's all kinds of different opportunities, but the number one resource that I've found personally is the group that you're in right now. And I've only dealt with like a handful of people here, and that's gotten me from like 6 months ago when I first came in this and I freaked out on the screen because I was so excited about it, to like now I'm in a candidate for hiring our heroes, right? And so like, and it's just like maybe 5 to 10 people that are in this group that have helped me like develop and get forward. And now I'm 2 times certified. So like, yeah, all these, I'm writing the resources down, right? And they're all great. But you may miss out on those, but the people that are like the best resource, these people right here. And it's hard to network when you're transitioning because you're scared of it. At least I was really scared to network, and I have a small network now, but it's super helpful. So just definitely lean into the people that are around you. They want to help you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
That's fantastic. And it's spot on. It's been said on this, in this forum before, but your network is your net worth. And it's very true. So you'll find that it's directly proportional. Your success is directly proportional to the length of the amount of time you spend networking and enriching those relationships across the ecosystem. This ecosystem, more so than any other I've ever experienced, is really built on community. And so I may be biased, Eric, but I also think these office hours are awesome.
Well, and to your point, on top of that, right? Like I never thought that networking would get me interviews. I just started like messaging people and contacting them to like just hear about their situation at their current employer, or like how it worked, how was it going for them. And at the end of the conversation, it'd be like, hey, you know what? Actually, you weren't. We want to get you on the interview list. And I was like, I didn't even know I was talking to somebody who had anything to do with that. But yeah, so it's worked out. It's really great.
Yeah, I liken it to like a spider web. Like every time you meet somebody or you go to an event, you're kind of spinning a strand of the web, and as your web gets thicker and thicker, it's going to catch more things. And in this case, it's not bugs; it's opportunities. So I always like to tell the story how I met Mark Baseman like at a Boston Salesforce event. And if you don't know who he is currently at Trailhead Academy, and he's been with Salesforce for a very long time. And I had a quick chat with him when I was first getting involved in the ecosystem. He introduced me to Jillian Bruce. I was on the admin podcast, and it just kind of it took off from there to the point now today. Like Mark is one of my biggest mentors. So you never know, when you reach out to someone, how that's going to develop. But yeah, to your point, Eric, it's definitely a worthwhile activity, and you have to spend the time to create these connections to realize the value. And this is a great place to do it. But there's others as well: Salesforce Saturdays, user groups, in-person events, so on and so forth.
Yeah, there's nothing like human interaction. To add to Eric's point, David, we just brought on board somebody that I've been networking. I think last Friday was a year that we started networking, and another colleague of mine, we wanted to get this person in because we believed in him. Navy SEAL, transition to business, very, very good work in picking up the lingo, but it took that long. It took a year and multiple times for him to apply himself at different roles where the right one came up and everything aligned. And he accepted the offer last Friday. It was pretty awesome. So yeah, network folks. Look, I network internal at Salesforce as David does, as we prepared to continue our journey. It never stops. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Eric. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I want to jump back to chat real quick because I know Brent has a question. We've got about 5 minutes left, so we probably got time for Brent's question and one more. So Brent asks, I found out my organization may be expanding its Salesforce structure for both Sales and Service Cloud. Forward-looking statement. Any recommendations for how, as a current leader, supervisor, to get competitive if there are opportunities for leading a team? If none of my previous experiences may directly align to leading DevOps or product roles. So kind of a question on how to leverage the current environment atmosphere to get ahead and establish himself as a people leader.
Well, I would say it is insane. I was the hiring manager this past year for all the PMs, and to see the market, right? It's amazing a market you can take advantage with now. I'm a little confused on the question, though. I'll be honest. I don't want to make sure I.
Brent, do you want to pop on here and clarify, or you can type it in chat as well?
Yeah. So I just was trying to ask, right? There may be an opportunity to move into like a leadership role within the Salesforce part of our organization, but I've got 20 years of public sector of leadership, but not Salesforce. So if I'm trying to make that transition, I've been working on certifications. Anything else I should be looking at or working on, trying to leverage to jump more into a leadership role in the Salesforce world?
It's a good question. I mean, the other thing I had on here on my list of items when we were prepping, David, was, aside from, getting your experience, is when you take a look at leadership, right, you have the experience in public sector. If I were to get your resume, I say this person is strong and where are the gaps, right? Salesforce knowledge. But right now, when we look at people and candidates, Salesforce experience is not necessary. It's not. So if you can show on there that you have the experience and the leadership qualities and you're investing into yourself, right? If you're not ready yet, another way to do it, there's some courses out there that I tell people that we also offer is kind of like that C-level communications. There are items you can look into in terms of team building, right? There's high impact teaming, right? There's a few different things that you can do, and I can find a link and I can work with Lina and team to go out. But it's basically showing that you're investing in yourself. But I don't want you to discredit your experience because you don't have specific Salesforce experience. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you're already well positioned, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to learn the tech, but you can't teach 20 years of leadership experience. So if you already have that under your belt, right, I think you're probably well on your way. And
in the customer success groups, we have roles that are industry specific. Like the primary role requirement is specific vertical knowledge. So,
and we have public sector in my team. I mean, I'm not on that team, but my peers, I'm a peer in PubSec, right? And that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
awesome. So, folks, we've got about 3 minutes left, and in that final 3 minutes, I wanted to circle back, make a full circle around to what I was referencing when I first introduced Anastasia. If you could distill down into or a few sentences what your secret sauce is for developing relationships with customers. What is that magic? How do you do that? How have you been so successful? What advice could you offer?
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you it's that we're people first and our title second, right? So if it's one thing we've learned in the pandemic, right? Someone's always going through something. And to lead with empathy and that we all succeed or fail together, right? That's my mantra, right? So if a customer is upset at you and 9 out of 10, there's maybe something going on that's outside of the project. And if you engage with them and you connect with them on that human level, you will go very far. So
I love it. Yep, we're definitely humans first. Very cool. All right. Well, we are at time, folks. Before we close, I do want to thank Anastasia for spending her time with us tonight to educate us about project and program manager roles in the ecosystem. And you know, I want to thank you all as well for spending your time here to learn about that with us. So thank you, Anastasia.
you're welcome. Thank you all. Nice to see you, meet you all.
It's been great. And hopefully we'll see you guys next week. And have a safe week and have a safe rest of your Wednesday evening.